Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, Tumwater City Public Works Committee meeting. And roll call, I show that we have Councilmember Jefferson, Councilmember Althauser, and myself, Councilmember Swarthout, in attendance. So first of all, we don't have any minutes to do, so we're going to head right into let's see. Bill, are you doing this one? I don't see a name next to it. So I assume since you were on there,
Yeah,
we have the
yes.
construction contract for active construction. And take it away, Bill.
All right. Okay, so I will share my screen. Whoop. Yeah. Yes. Let's see if that magic happens. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right, very good. I am coming off of a cold, so I'll try my best to speak clearly for you. So this morning I'll be presenting on the I-5 Trosper Road Capitol Boulevard reconfiguration project. And we're going to be talking about request for additional construction funds, and that's specifically to request our change order authority to go from 10% to 20%. Wanted to start out with just a quick overview of the project, just to remind everybody what this project was all about. The project consists of three roundabouts on Trosper 6th and the I-5 ramps, and then Capitol and Trosper. Linda Street improvements, the construction of new 6th Avenue from Trosper to Lee, reconstruction of the I-5 northbound on and off ramps, a complete rebuild of the storm, sewer, and the water system within the project limits. We also have full utility undergrounding of all the dry utilities. That includes both PSC and also the utility purveyors like Comcast and Lumen. Street lighting for the whole project, along with crosswalk beacon systems at the roundabouts. And then we have our landscaping and irrigation. So again, a fairly large project, pretty complex in this area of Tumwater. And we wanted to talk about the construction budget itself. So this project was awarded for construction to ACI construction company for $12,150,150. Our standard 10% change order authority provided to us by Tumwater Municipal Code 2.14060 is 10%, and that puts us at a total amount of $13,365,165. We're about a month away from substantial completion, so we're expecting substantial completion by the end of July for this project. So we're in a pretty good spot to do projections of the cost out to the end of the project. And it appears that we're going to be around the 14% as far as overage on the project from the original bid amount, which puts us at an estimated $13,851,171. We're asking today for a change order authority to 20%. That's not meaning that we expect that we're going to go to 20%. It just makes it a little easy for us, because if we have issues that come up on the project from now until the end, it gives us some flexibility to deal with those final issues and complete the project. So at 20% change order authority, the project would be at $14,580,180. So you probably want to understand a little bit about like where these construction cost increases have come from. So this is a really complex project, as you know, a lot of things going on. So there are a lot of smaller items that have occurred.
Bill, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was trying to do the math real quick. So can you tell me what that total number is? I see the percentage, but just add it up real quick for me and tell me.
Total number. I'm not
The
sure.
difference, just what the difference is.
The difference. So,
Yes,
from the original bid amount.
yes,
Okay, so here, I'll do it for you real quick.
okay.
I could probably try to do it. Huh? I don't have my
It's
calculator. So,
approximately 2,300,000.
yeah,
2,300,000.
That's
Okay,
approximate. Yeah.
yeah, is that,
got it.
it's from to, that's for the full, 20%. What
Right.
our projection, is, what is that, about 1.5?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so 1.5 million projection, but just to be safe, we're gonna say 2 million.
Yes, that's
All
the,
right, all right, perfect. Carry on.
all right, thank you. So what I wanted to do today was talk about some of the main categories of cost changes that have occurred. So like I said, this isn't inclusive of everything, but it's just kind of the main larger items that occurred on the project. So we did have project quantity increases. Because our project is a unit bid project, every unit that the contractor bids on and installs on the project, they need to be paid for. And there are cases where we had overruns on quantities. Those overruns occurred for many different reasons. Some of them were just the estimating was off. So we had some items where they just weren't estimated completely correctly originally. So when things were installed, the numbers just didn't jive and we had to pay more. There were a few items on our project where the product that we were installing wasn't identified in an actual bid item, and we had to rectify those. But as a rule, the majority of our quantity increases, some of the bigger items like trench backfill, rock, and temporary asphalt were just a function of it took more material to actually build the project than was originally expected. And some of that has to do with construction phasing, how the contractor did the work, especially with things like temporary pavement. But like I said, in those particular cases, as long as the means and methods of the contractor make sense, that's really up to them on how they have to build the project. So we've had to address some quantity issues on the project. Our unknown underground utilities, obviously that's a challenge in an area where you have a very old roadway with a lot of utilities underground. So we did encounter quite a large number of unknown utilities and utility conflicts when we actually did the project. The project did have due diligence at the original design of the project, where we did utility locates and potholes and other things to investigate the underground. But no matter how diligent you are in that effort, it's pretty likely that you're going to find things that nobody knew were there or were installed in different locations. And you don't know that until you open up the ground and you start installing. So we had to do redesign and adjust in a number of locations to avoid existing underground utilities. And that also had to do with phasing of the project. So we had to install our sewer, water, and our storm, especially our sewer and our water first. And then we came back and installed our PSC trenches. So just from a phasing standpoint, it was a little bit complex to deal with that. I put a section in here for unknown obstructions and obstacles. In this particular case, a lot of that had to do with things we found when we were digging out there. A couple of notable ones is we found a void underneath Linda Street. It was pretty sizable. That was from probably a water leak that's been going on for a very long time. We had to over excavate that void and remediate it, so it wouldn't be a problem later. We also found quite a few remnants of old foundations, structures, both mostly old storm structures that were buried that were in the way. We had to remove an extra portion of a retaining wall. So there were quite a few obstructions and obstacles we just didn't know about that we hit when we were excavating for the project. For the fiber optic system, I've been to Public Works before and talked about the fiber optic system. That was a cost that was put onto the project, mostly because the fiber optic system was, it really wasn't, it was installed many, many years ago. I think they reused old conduits when they did it. So it wasn't installed correctly in the first place. So we had to actually reroute the fiber to get it around all of the different utilities that we were installing. The good news on that one is that it did cost money to do, but now the fiber optic system in that area is installed correctly, and it should last for many, many years without any problems. So that issue has been addressed. And we also know where the fiber optic is now because we had it reinstalled, which we didn't before. Schedule 74, commercial and private conversions. This also has to do with the trench routing through the project site. As I mentioned, we typically install almost all the main utilities, and then you come back and do your dry utilities, the power and the other utility purveyors. We did have conflicts when we came back and tried to construct per the PSC plans. That created a little bit of a challenge with setting the vaults that we needed and finding locations for all of the equipment. And also we had to reroute some of the mainline trench to get around different utilities. It's kind of a cascading effect because if you make a design change for sewer, water, or something like that, then it kind of cascades into other things that are being designed or being constructed later on. So we had to deal with quite a bit of that. And then also our connections into the existing buildings and the commercial properties. And then there's a couple of private homes as well. We had some difficulties there. One of the bigger challenges we're having right now is our final connection to the old pho restaurant. And in that particular case, the equipment is just the connection points at the restaurant are so antiquated that they don't even meet really current electrical codes. So it looks like we might have to do some work there to bring the connection point up to current standards in order to actually make the final connection into the building. And currently that building is owned by the city as a city property. The city storm pond modifications. The pond's actually functioning right now, but we're not getting the infiltration rates that we expected and that we wanted. So then we went back and did some investigation, and we found that there's some poor soil strata in parts of the pond. So we've been working on a remediation to fix that. We have a solution. We're gonna over-X the pond about 1.5 feet. And that'll increase the storage of the pond. It'll increase the infiltration rate that we need, and then put in a few smaller infiltration trenches inside the pond. So that'll get us back to where we need to be. But we just weren't getting the infiltration rates that we needed. So that is an extra to go back in and work on that pond and get it back up to the proper infiltration rate that we need. Lee and Linda Street, I kind of combined these two. They're kind of the same in a way. Lee Street, we weren't originally gonna overlay Lee Street, and as you can see, if you go out there, Lee Street's been overlaid, asphalt overlay, from the corner on the west all the way up to all the way up to 6th Avenue. And we weren't gonna actually overlay the road originally, but we had to make design changes because the existing asphalt or asbestos water line was in such poor condition that the contractor was worried about damaging the water line during construction. So we did some redesigns, but the redesigns increased the utility cuts within the roadway. So if we would have left it like it was, we would have had all these utility cuts in the road. So we did add an overlay for that portion of the roadway to get everything back up to where it needed to be, and really to extend the life of the road so we don't have water infiltrating down through the cuts. So we did have extra costs there. And we also did some extra work on Linda Street, right at the east end of Linda Street. On the east end of Linda Street, there's a small portion of the road where the roadway terminates, and there's a few houses down in there. That wasn't part of our original project, but after the project was constructed and we started looking at some storm drainage and some utility cuts in the road, it just made sense to tie those improvements into the Linda Street work. So there was some expense there for adding that smaller portion onto that part of the project. And I think the last one, which is was kind of a big one for us, when we were working on the sewer line, the sewer main on Capitol, we got down to the south side of our project limits and tried to tie into the existing manhole. But in that particular case, not only was the manhole in very poor condition, but when we excavated to make our connection, we found a utility trench that we weren't expecting. So it had concrete in the utility trench, and then also a gas line that was impacting our ability to tie into the manhole. So it made sense for us to extend that sewer line about 180 feet south in order to tie into a more favorable manhole. That extension of the sewer main also resulted in the removal of the concrete panels that are underneath Capitol Boulevard. So we did have to go quite a bit, 180 feet further south. The benefit to the city on that, though, was the intent eventually is to upgrade that sewer line all the way down the Capitol corridor. So we got a portion of the sewer main replaced. And we also removed those concrete panels, which are always a problem. So it was kind of it was an increase to our project, but it was a net benefit to the city as well. So those are kind of some of the bigger issues that have been a component of the cost for the project. But like I said, it's not inclusive of everything. But those are kind of the big main ones that I had to present to you today.
Can I ask a question about one of
Yeah.
those? So the city owns the Pho restaurant building. That was a property acquisition for this project, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So why do we have to fix aren't we going to, what's the plan for that building? I thought that it was eventually, I haven't driven by there in recent days, but I thought it was either going to come down. Like why do we have to fix the electrical part of it? Are we preserving that building? I forget what the plan is for that.
Brandon might be able to touch on that, but it goes back to the concept that if PSC, so PSC can't not serve a property. So when we converted that to underground, that property still needs to be served. So we can't really get out of not reconnecting it. It's an odd situation because when we normally you don't see this too much, but there's just such a difference between the level of workmanship that you would expect and what's actually out there as far as the connection point, that there's just no way to connect it the way that it actually is. So I have talked with Brandon about this, and his impression is that, yeah, we need to move forward on the connection point for that building.
Yeah, and I could jump in real quick, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to turn on my video because I am in the truck with a kid, taking him to work or to school. But ultimately, within the purchase and sale agreement that we have with the folks that are buying the property, we are required to connect them to all utility, and that is regardless of what they plan on doing with it. My understanding is that they are going to keep the building, and they are going to repurpose it. It is possible that the work that we do right now will be pulled out and changed in order to serve whatever their purpose is. But we do have to reconnect them. And when you do commercial properties where we are responsible for doing the connection afterwards, it doesn't matter what it takes to get them back serving. We do have to make that happen.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, were there any other questions on the cost increase component?
Yes, yes. One last question. So if you were to capture all of this, what would the major reason be?
That's a very complicated question. I don't know
Mhm.
if, council member, I could kind of identify one item. I think it's these projects, like I said, these projects are complex, and one thing to remember is that the reality of it is that anytime anything changes on a project,
Mhm.
it tends to have a cost implication. And that could be something very small. It could be like a contractor's owed $500 for additional work, or it could be something really expensive, like a contractor's owed, 180,000 for a change. But every single thing that occurs,
Mhm.
adds up over time. For the amount of I've been doing this a long time, and for the amount of underground utility work that we did in a kind of a really old roadway, I think we did okay. I mean,
Okay.
you're gonna always have costs when you dig and replace utilities, because you don't know what's there.
Mhm.
It is another thing I'll mention is that typically on road projects, if you can get past your underground work, the rest of it's actually pretty good. Usually your costs are associated with a lot of things underground, because you can see all of the stuff above ground, right? That's pretty evident what your
Right.
issues are going to be. So I don't know if I could really add one. I mean, I think some of the bigger ones, I think the ones I put on this list are really the ones that have the biggest ticket,
Yeah.
cost component.
Yeah. But well, you answered my question well, Bill, because when we have to say, okay, this $2 million difference, what I wrote down was basically unknown terrain, and the utilities were not visible. So there was some unknown obstructions that we didn't know about until we started digging. So
And there
thank you.
is, yeah, and there is one thing to keep in mind is that there are, like I mentioned, there are a few items that we have that were additional costs, but the choice to do what we were doing, we could have done some like a fix super cheap, but we would
Yeah.
have been back in there later, in a
Yeah.
couple of years fixing it. Some of the things, like, for example, doing the overlay on Lee Street, that solves a problem for many years in the future. And it was the right thing to do, instead of patching it all up. We did a good overlay. We had the equipment out there and everybody was ready to work on it. So we just got it done. And now Lee Street, is not on a paver project in the future. It's actually been taken care of now.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you, Bill.
Were there any other questions on the costing component? No.
Okay.
So I'll just move on here real quick. So the pretty basic on the project budget allocation for the overruns. The overruns are gonna be paid through the CFPs. So in this project, we have the transportation, water, sewer, and storm CFPs. The majority of the money will probably be allocated to the transportation and the storm, with components to the water and the sewer as well, as applicable. So those come out when we quantify our costs, and when we do our for lack of a better term, our spreadsheets for all of the unit bids for the project. So I think that was all I had. If there are any further questions from the group?
Can you go back to that previous slide that had the funding
Yes.
stuff on there? So it's sort of equally, can you go over that again, kind of the split between the overruns between these different funds? It's sort of equal or just kind of divvied up? Like,
Yeah, so I don't have the actual breakdown. So we haven't gone through and done a breakdown of completely how all these lay out. But what I know is that, like I said, the larger component will be the transportation CFP. And then there will be some storm because we have the pond fix. And then probably the biggest one on the sewer will be the sewer extension component that we did. So that's going to be on that. And then water, there's a few on water. I don't think water is going to get hit that much on this. But I don't have an actual true breakdown. I think what happens is when we calculate our pay applications for the contractor, we actually segregate all of the units into the different categories. So it kind of automatically populates it over time as each pay app comes through. So we know how much money is being allocated to transportation, water, storm, that type of thing.
okay. And when we approved moving forward with the project, I mean, we always build in contingency funds within appropriations for projects. So some of this 2 point whatever million up to 20%, but really we think it'll be more like 1.5, 1.7. Some of this 1.7 is already accounted for within what we appropriated for the project already, correct?
That, all right, I'm going to jump in because I do the funding and the CFP management, but you are correct. When I did the budgeting for the transportation CFP specifically, I had assumed or I had built in additional funding specifically because the bidding environment is still extremely unpredictable.
Yeah, inflation, cost of materials, everything is changing day by day. So we already built some of this in.
Correct. If I recall, I believe that the transportation fund is fully good to go. I had budgeted enough to cover this amount. And then it wasn't just the bidding environment being absolutely insane, I guess is one way to put it. We also had put in the factor that this, quite frankly, is likely the most complex project the city's ever undertaken. And Bill touched on all of the old infrastructure, everything that you can't see, traffic impacts. So we were prepared for potential overruns.
So storm and water, those overruns are a little more modest compared to transpo and sewer. Transpo was largely taken care of in advance through contingency. Are there any, like with expenses from sewer, you know, if I'm not quite certain if this works like a zero-sum game, but will there be other projects that are sort of in our sewer capital facilities plan that might have to be delayed as a result of increased costs for this project?
There is that possibility. I know that within all of the utility funds, they have gotten pretty constrained on capacity to absorb additional costs due to very large projects coming up. I know Dan and Troy are working pretty hard on coming up with some resource for lack of a better word, to borrow money to complete some of these large projects. And so that will be factored in. But ultimately, I do believe that those utility funds are not in as great space on the capital side as they used to be. On the operating side, they're good. And that's not for financing predictions or anything. It's just, we just have really large projects that have been deferred.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So I think anything else or that I can help you with?
Let's see. So I just thank you for all the questions that you've been asking. So we're looking at hopefully maybe July that it's going to be, you know, semi wrapped up, or what's the ETA for? I mean, it's hard to predict, I guess, but we'll be redoing the road, doing an overlay on the road.
Yeah, we're looking good right now. We're looking at substantial completion in July. So that means that everything's in place and the facility can safely operate. And then I think final completion, if I remember, Colby was at September. I think it was September.
Yeah, give or take about September, kind of barring the electrical service issue to the building and, a couple other punch list items as they got to work through them. So there's a seating window possibly too that will have to do with the pond restoration as well. So, but yeah, roughly that timeline.
And then we'll be at final project completion at the end of the year, which is kind of the process of the final working through with the contractor. If they have any, payment issues or anything they'll always bring something up at the end that we have to actually, on a large project like this, you're always gonna have something come up at the end that we'll have to kind of negotiate and work through. It's extremely common and it happens. It doesn't worry me. It's just a function of how you do the final closeout on projects this size. Did you have a question?
Angela?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is it on the calendar for the grand opening so we can take photos for historical purposes? And when is that date?
I don't know.
The date is not set. I know Lisa and I have had some brief discussions on that, and I will pick the topic back up with her, probably at my check-in with her next week, and we could follow up at a later date.
Perfect. We need to get that on the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm with you on that one, but I understand because I think I had asked that earlier because we're kind of already open already because we're letting traffic go through. So you got Public Works, you guys are just like real shy on celebrating your victories. So we just this has been huge and we want to celebrate your victory on this project. So
yeah. Oh, Councilmember Swarthout, I just wanted to mention that you had mentioned something about paving, but we do have one final paving operation that is going to occur. I can't remember exactly what date it is, but it's within the next couple of weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. And that will be our final lift of asphalt. We're going to try to do it in one shot. So we're going to try to make it as painless as we can and just, run through and do that final lift all the way through. So.
Yeah, I guess I can elaborate on that. So that'll be the first week of June. It'll be night paving that's going to happen. And then after they get all the paving done, they're going to have to come through and do all the utility valve adjustments. So it's kind of just raising all the surface iron and then kind of doing some general site cleanup, a little bit of the last of the landscaping and just getting everything pretty much buttoned up for operational use. And we still have to wait for a little bit of cure time on the pavement in order to get all the pavement marking applications down as well. So once all the pavement markings are in place, they will have all lanes open for all roundabouts. So currently restricted to just one lane for Trosper roundabout and Capitol Boulevard roundabout. And once we get all the pavement markings down, we'll be completely open. So.
All right. Very good.
Very good. Yeah, I've only been through there. Well, I go through, maybe once a week or so I go through there and I was amazed at the changes. But I was just curious, how are people adapting to this? I would just be curious, like when Department of Health, when the state workers down south try to go through Capitol, do we have the backup? And, are people playing fair in our roundabouts?
I'd like to have a story to share. My husband, he was negotiating the terms. So in that, in nice terms, he said, this is going to be accident alley for our seniors. So hopefully it's going to be clearly marked, so just my comment, have it clearly marked.
Statistically, roundabouts are much safer than lights because you have fewer collision points. So I certainly hope, and I don't think that will be the case, but we'll monitor that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest advantage is the collision speed. I think with roundabouts, typically you're not going to have high speed impact Most accidents are sideswipe and, you know, you get hit on the side. My wife got hit on the side in the roundabout just a while back. So it does happen every once in a while, but those are pretty minor compared to something like a T-bone at an intersection, which can be pretty devastating. So,
All right. Thanks, Bill. Great job.
all
Yeah,
right.
and I guess to tag team on that conversation real quick, we've been kind of having some discussions down in Public Works to work with our communications team and do some public outreach efforts, kind of educating driver awareness and kind of how to navigate that specifically. So we're trying to put something together and get that out there as well.
All
That's
right.
great. I do have one more question. So the recommendation is to place this on the consent calendar, which is what we typically do for funding authorizations and things of this nature. That sounds fine. When's the next time this issue will generally appear before the council, either in a work session or something else? Would it be acceptance of work, which would be later in the calendar year? Because I know that I'm assuming that the rest of the council would also appreciate hearing sort of the updates once we get to substantial completion, just because it is such a complex and important project for the city's future. So I guess I'm sort of curious when the next time we would get a briefing would be, maybe like at substantial completion, or would it be when we are actually doing the acceptance of work and voting to approve that?
Yeah.
So the
Go
tip
ahead.
process would be at acceptance of work, but since we're going to have a sort of a ribbon cutting, I mean, if you're suggesting or wanting it, I could at least probably mention it at a council meeting as like a very brief update, and then maybe perhaps provide the date of whatever opening that we do. That could either come from me, it could come from Lisa in one of her reports or something like
Yeah.
that.
It could be an administrator report thing to just mention that. That suffice, I think.
Very good.
Cool.
Are the other?
Well, then I have one question that's off topic. Oh, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if you, Madam Chair and Councilmember Jefferson, if you're also comfortable with it being on the consent calendar. Like,
Yes.
typically do that. Seems fine to me.
Yeah, do we need to read it into the minutes though? Do we read the recommended action and so it's
Yeah, we need to do a
Capture.
motion.
right? Okay.
But did you have another question before we do that? I interrupted you. I think.
Yeah, I was just on the other street. It was just curious. When I was going in the library the other day, one of the ladies was when we still had some traffic people out there moving stuff around on Israel. We're just curious when that's going to be repaved. Is that going to be in time for the parade? So
No.
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 Okay.
Well, the Israel Road project, just due to some complications, mostly with trying to work that project through a WSDOT approval because it has federal money in as part of it. We did have some difficulties with moving it through the WSDOT review process. So the current plan is to we're going to put the project out to bid here shortly, but we're not going to try to do the road work before the 4th.
Okay. Right.
Quite a number of those, all the work that the utility companies have been doing out there right now, they've been doing a lot of cuts and, it's kind of patchbacks and stuff. They're going to be going out there and replacing those patches here shortly within the next week or so. But there's no plan to repave the road before 4th.
Okay, good to know. All right. Well, thank you.
All right.
All right, so are we ready? We do have a recommended action before us. It's recommended that the Public Works Committee place the request to increase the change authority provided to the Transportation and Engineering Director under Tumwater Municipal Code 2.14.060 from 10% to 20%. For the Interstate 5 Trosper Road Capitol Boulevard reconfiguration project on June 4th, 2024, the City Council consent calendar with a recommendation to authorize and approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Bill. That's a big one. So I was looking forward. it's really pretty too, actually. I was kind of how it's all turning out. It looks pretty nice as well. All right. So Bill, are you up on the other one too now? We've got an interlocal agreement for Mottman. No, it's Mary Heather. Yay.
Me. Yes, so good morning, council members. I'm just doing the thing. There we go. Thank you for the opportunity to present information about the Mottman Road Pedestrian and Street Improvements Project and the interlocal agreement with City of Olympia that will set the framework for the completion of this project. This project was developed several years ago as a joint project between Tumwater and the City of Olympia. It borders the South Puget Sound Community College, SPSCC campus on the north side, following Mottman Road from R.W. Johnson Boulevard to the east for approximately 3,700 feet. 1/4 of that distance falls within Tumwater, approximately 1/4 of that distance falls within Tumwater, and the rest is in Olympia city limits. This project aims to improve Mottman Road to a standard that serves all modes of transportation, including human-powered, non-motorized, and vehicular. And we do have all the users on this road. This gets a wide variety of types of traffic. The project, you can see on the upper is the existing conditions. We're adding sidewalk, bike lanes, some channelization, striping, and I drive this road fairly regularly and have seen that pedestrians do use this, and they will be, I think, will be grateful for the new facilities. So this will increase the mobility for pedestrians and also work through making it better for vehicles as well. Not in our portion, but just as an aside, in the Olympia portion, there's a crossing of Percival Creek, and they will need widening that crossing so that they're adding a bridge. So for them, this is a much bigger project. For us, it's a traditional sort of streetscape project in our portion. General process that we're looking at: consultant selection coming up soon. Then we move to some data collection and use that to get our preliminary design. We do have conceptual design, if you will, which is what you saw on the previous slide. Then design plans, specifications, and a construction estimate. And then we do permitting and we get to construction. And each of these items are covered by our interlocal agreement with Olympia. So the plan being that Olympia is taking the lead on the project. We are supporting as needed, but in general, this will be an Olympia project with us sort of chipping in for our portion. The project schedule, we're looking at getting that consultant on board this summer. Then it's a couple-year design, and then construction in 2027. So that's quite a ways away. And it's a couple year of construction, so finishing in 2028. And there are, of course, because this is me, there are some caveats to this schedule, of course. In the Olympia portion, preliminary design indicates that the existing culvert at Percival Creek will not require replacement. However, if it is determined that it does require a replacement, or if there's some other treatment there, it could add years to design and or construction phases. Also, if right-of-way is needed for storm facility and Olympia has trouble getting it, that could add a year. And finally, bridges they're not a super common item for us to be building around here. So what the schedule assumes that everything goes well, but of course we want to say if it doesn't, then it could take longer. And Olympia has said they're committed to keeping us, Tumwater, in the loop as far as quarterly progress reports and notices of project milestones when they are met. The project is funded through Connecting Washington program. This is a legislative fund, and the project total is $7.6 million. We are at 1.748, and that's approximately 25% of the total. There are not matching funds required for this this project, and then the City of Olympia has the remaining at 5.86 million, which is approximately 75%. So I apologize, in your staff report, it does not have the correct recommended action. So I'll read it here, and then I can turn it off for questions, and I can bring it back up when you're ready. But we're hoping to place the interlocal agreement with the City of Olympia for Mottman Road Improvement Project on the June 4, 2024 City Council consent calendar, with a recommendation to approve and authorize the mayor to sign.
So if this is sort of a joint partnership with Olympia on the overall project, are they going to be sort of project managers and we're working with them, or will there be two separate project management teams?
They will be the project managers, and in fact, we are working on streamlining the process so that they can receive the grant funding directly, and then if we have costs for our time, we could submit to them to say, hey, we used some staff time and we need some of that grant funding. But overall, the plan is to make this as cohesive as possible, so that, say, your contractors, they're not having to think about two different jurisdictions and everything.
And if there are higher than expected costs that would require local support or local funding that go beyond the grant, that would have to be negotiated and come back to us for approval before any increased expenses along those lines, correct?
Yes, so we did talk a lot about this just in starting out negotiating it, and I am confident that we will not need, of course, now that I've said that, just watch me be
Knock
wrong.
on wood.
Yeah. But $1.7 million for the amount of work that we're doing is sufficient and should cover all aspects of the project. I think this project, our portion, is very straightforward. As I mentioned, it's sidewalks, it's paving. That's basically it. The place where this project could run into snags is the bridge, the crossing of Percival Creek, and those are within Olympia. So we did talk with them and make sure that we're not going to accidentally start paying for that. So we're not necessarily holding to the 25%, 75%, because if their portion goes way up, we wouldn't necessarily be paying 25% of that portion that goes way up. So
okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Angela, do you have any questions? Yeah, the first thing that popped into my head, because I drive that road several times a day.
Okay.
And that's where I live. And so the first thing that popped in my head is what they're going to do with that bridge, because there's I don't know how you're going to add more land on either side to create, but you guys are magicians, and I know that engineers can do anything. So
with enough time and money, right?
Yeah. Because I was wondering, we're replacing that one bridge on Somerset Drive, and then doing the one on Sap Road. If that one's going to be in the same condition, that they're going to have to look at doing something to allow the fish because that's the beginning of, yeah, really the beginning of Percival Creek right there. So,
Right. And it sounds like they believe that it's not a barrier.
Mhm.
So that, but there could be a condition issue.
Mhm.
So more to come on that aspect for sure.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's going to be quite a project, and I can't wait for them to get it done. And 4 years is goodness. We
Right.
had to wait another 4 years. So,
Now-
all right.
Now, no,
Fine.
I had a comment just
Okay.
as far as safety, because there's a lot of college students that use that. And I used that when I went to massage school because I would ride my bike, and so it's really going to make a difference in the
Mhm.
lives of pedestrians and bikers. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
good project.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to get across the creek and get dicey. So if you're a
Yeah.
pedestrian, so yeah. But gotta time your walk. So, well, this is awesome. So, if we don't have any other questions, so I'll go ahead and have Mary Heather bring up the recommended action.
Uh, Thanks for your patience.
All right. So we have a recommended action in front of us. The Public Works Committee placed the interlocal agreement with the City of Olympia for the Mottman Road Improvement Project on June 4th, 2024 City Council consent calendar with a recommendation to approve and authorize the mayor to sign.
So moved.
And I second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All righty. A lot done today. This is great. You guys are
Thank you very
busy.
much.
Oh. So, when's the picnic? Is
Oh,
that?
may I just say, yes, thank you for
Yeah.
celebrating with us. It is Public Works Week, which is a
Mhm.
fantastic time for us. And today is the lunch. So
Oh, okay. What time you guys down there? I can't remember.
I think it's like 11:30 to 1-ish.
Okay. Okay. Just curious. I know last time I think I got to judge the desserts, which were amazing. So yeah.
Where's the location?
Historical park
Thank you.
at the
Oh,
place.
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
There
thank
is-
you.
I did just want to point out if anybody does decide to come, any of the council members, please coordinate with Brittany just to make sure that we don't end up with a quorum out there.
Okay. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, thanks.
So, all right. So nobody will show up now. I'm sorry, you're gonna scare us all away.
No, actually, we'd love it if they'll show up. Just I didn't used to
I know.
kind of do
I'm
that
sorry.
caveat
Yeah.
with Hannah, so I got in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's try to reach out to Brittany if you could.
Yeah, I know we've got Karen listening in, so she's got that paddle in her office, so we'll behave. So yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Oh, and then I just had a quick question for Dan. Are we in the water? It looked like we had action down and we were going for a walk, and if how the construction is going for the moving into South Puget Sound building for the water department.
Yeah, we've pretty much been running around with our hair on fire all week. We are now fully moved in for the most part. I think we have a couple boxes left over at City Hall, but we are in the new SPSDC offices. So once we get the boxes unpacked and dust settled, and I know the contractor's back in there today doing some final punch work, punch list stuff. So once we get settled, love to offer. I sent an invite for y'all to come on out and
Okay.
kind of visit the space and check it out. So.
Cool.
Yep.
Good. Another project getting done. So, all right. Well, if we don't have anything else for the agenda, anything else to talk about, then I will call the Thursday, May 23rd, 2024 Public Works Committee meeting adjourned. Thanks, you guys. Have a good holiday weekend.